In this moment, whatever we're holding, and this is why Gandhi, he was very, very, very clear about this, and Gandhi said, you must be the change you would wish to see in the world. And here, it just made reference to what you give is what you get. You can't get without giving. Because in reality, what that's referring to is, as an individual, each of us is experiencing. We're experiencing the ego self or the spiritual self in every given moment. That's it. You don't have a choice. It's one or the other.
My name is Ginger. If you need anything and you don't sing, you just holler.
So, when the Course says forgiveness is unknown in heaven because it's not necessary, from the spiritual, why would forgiveness be unnecessary? There's no need for it. It would be inconceivable in heaven.
Because,
Why?
Because if you're living in the awakened state, then there would be nothing to forgive.
Nothing to forgive.
Right.
So, what about sin?
Well, you don't have sin where there's agape love. You can't have anything but agape love.
You don't have sin, and neither do they.
Right.
Sin
Right.
doesn't exist.
Right.
So is sin real? It can't be real then. If it's gone with just a shift of consciousness, it can't be real. It's an illusion.
Right.
So, and this is one of the main things when Christ was talking about grace, washing away sin. What it means is you're living in sin when you have a belief. Based in ego. Or
This one's made in Splenda, no carbohydrates, no carbs. These two
Judgment.
sugar added, which reduces
have a judgment about something.
the vanilla is no fat.
You have a judgment about something, you're going to experience sin.
Less fat, sugar, calories, and cholesterol than regular ice cream.
But what's interesting is, this is why the Course says this. There's love and there's fear. This is real
Or whatever.
and this is an illusion.
Okay.
Fear is an illusion. If it wasn't an illusion, it doesn't go away with changing a thought,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is, you can be afraid, but love can't be touched. Love doesn't change. God doesn't change. That's why the Bible says, God is that which never changes. The moment you let go of your fear, the moment you let go of a judgment, the moment you let go of all sinful thoughts, you experience the grace which brings you back to reality. A miracle. Just that, a miracle. That's what the miracles are. The miracles are momentary glimpses of ultimate reality where you let go of your illusions. And your illusions are based on judgments. Pretty simple.
Very simple concept.
Isn't it? Very simple concept. Well, I don't know why we complicate it so much, but we do. We really complicated this.
Would you say it was miracles as momentary glimpses of?
Of ultimate reality, or true reality, or of God. Somebody does something to us and we just look and we make an assumption and we judge. We cannot help, here and now, we cannot help but experience that judgment. Right?
Right.
You shared an experience with me about that encounter that you had.
Mm-hmm.
And in one moment, you're feeling one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you let it go, and look and say, well, I'm not going to go down this road. I'm going to just let things be and let me see what's going on. Instantaneous transformation, wasn't it?
Mhm.
What changed? The circumstances didn't change. What changed was your response to that moment. Rather than react, you interact. Two different states to experience the same thing.
Yeah.
So one is based on love and that which is real. One is based on fear and illusion. Within the fear illusionary world, of course would say it's not without power. There is power in this world and within the illusion. And you can experience it.
Mhm.
And you can suffer as long as you're experiencing it. And you will suffer. You ever hold a grudge? Pissed off at somebody?
Mhm.
You ever suffer because you were holding that grudge? Right up until the moment you let it go. The moment you let it go. It has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
The moment you let it go, you're free. You experience grace. It's washed away. If you wash it away.
You let
You know?
go of the double-edged sword is what you're doing.
So the Course talks about forgiveness being a necessary, I'm going to say a tool. It's a necessary tool that you will use to get you to a state where you recognize it was never necessary. So you're holding a grudge, you forgive the person, you experience the peace within you because you let go of that which was taking you down, and all of a sudden you come to a realization that that was not really necessary, that whole experience was that you created. However, it served a purpose, which is what you just read to me a little bit ago. It serves a purpose. Everything that happens in this realm, everything that happens within creation, serves a purpose. And that is God's will. What's God's will?
To let us experience.
To let us experience until we experience love. Till we experience God. Whatever it takes. That person over there is going to need something different than that one over there. Each one is on their own unique path. We're all on a unique path, even though we have a common objective. The common objective is to wake up and recognize unconditional love, agape love. That's the common objective of the entire system of creation. Be it in this world, be it in any dimension, another extraterrestrial being, doesn't matter. The objective is to get to that state somehow. How we get there is going to be unique, and there are infinite potentialities for each of us to experience, because we all have free will. Our free will is going to call through the law of magnetism. Our free will is going to call experiences to us. Some of them are going to be pleasant and some are going to be unpleasant. Whatever it takes, shake us a little. You know, shake. Like this world right now is going through a transitional state. Many people are going to tell you the energies are changing. Well, they are in a way, yes. There's no question. But you can look and focus on that, or you can focus on self. This self. The higher self. That would be the advice I would give everyone. Focus on the higher self. Recognize that there is a greater purpose in every given moment than the ones that we think we should be here for. We're all here to experience, but the greatest experience is to become one with God and to serve God. That's what the Bhagavad Gita would talk about. That's what Christ. What did Jesus say? What did he say you should do with your world, with your life in this world?
call it any.
Love God with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole soul.
The only downfall
Right?
is.
And Him alone you should serve.
Oh, wow, okay.
You ever hear that before?
Yeah.
That's what he was talking about. Now, it doesn't mean that you go out onto the street with your hat in your hand. What it means is you wake up in the morning and you recognize that everything that exists is a part of God. It's all holy and divine. You and everyone you're going to encounter. So you can serve to interact with that from the level of understanding namaste, or you can react to it from the human judgmental mind. Now, we've all been pretty much familiar with this one, and we teach our children to be judgmental. We do. We teach them to look at the world in good and bad. We teach them to be fearful.
You have more outside?
It's just part of this world.
You got a lot of them.
It's not necessarily the ultimate truth, but it's part of what we experience in the world.
The bar right there is for the lady, she's gonna give you 30 cents.
To offer forgiveness is the only way for us to have it, for it reflects the law of heaven, and giving and receiving are the same. Heaven is the neutral state for all the sons of God as He created them. Such is their reality forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. This is why awake versus asleep. Within the dream,
I think the lady didn't want to give
it doesn't matter what details you dream.
She gave me $1.
You had a dream I don't know if you had a dream, you probably had a dream, but I don't know if you remember. Do you remember your dream last night?
I did from the night before.
Okay. Do you remember the one before that and the one before that, or whatever? Do you remember that they were different?
Yeah.
Okay. And so we have different dreams. Which one was more real?
At the time, it seemed very real.
At the time it seems real. After reflecting upon it, when you open your eyes, oh, that was a dream. Or you have a nightmare and you're really panicked and you wake up, oh, it was only a dream. I can relax now. Okay? When you wake up from the dream, you recognize that it had no power over you. It was not as real as you thought it was when you were in it. And now you experience something different. Right? When you wake up as a spiritual being, when you wake up to the greater consciousness of the higher self over the lower self, the ego, when the spirit wakes up, it's just like waking up from a dream. You recognize, oh, none of that had any power over me. I believed it in the moment. Oh, I thought I was going to be left stranded out on the street with no place to live. I believed that. I was scared. But wait a minute, that's not even real. Oh, interesting. So that's what the whole thing of creation is about, is experiencing the real truth or experiencing an illusion. The illusions can feel real. And now here we are, back where we left off last week. And we hear that Cain was very upset. Cain was angry because Abel gave his best to God, and Cain gave, whatever he had, that little left over, he gave it to God. Here, you can have this. But Abel went and gave his best. He says, his best I have, you have this. So that's why when we look at this, all of a sudden we see that there's a judgmental mind that was formed. And that's what this was about. So the Lord attempts to correct Cain's confused mind by telling him that it was enough for him to do his best. It is not a competition between him and his brother. Nor, and this is one of the things that Mother Teresa said, it's not about you and them, it's about you and God. each of us is only responsible for ourselves ultimately. And we're going to give account in every moment for ourselves, not the other person. It's not outside there. Even though we are all interconnected, what we experience is uniquely ours until we move into that oneness consciously, and then we experience the fullness. But within the dream, when we're asleep, we all have unique individualized experiences, and we all have our unique dreams. I'm going to do this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. Everybody has whatever they've defined as their dream. This is what I'm going to do in the world. Which is, it's the human way.
You see what I mean?
So then Cain says to Abel, his brother, let me just review the little thing here from Genesis 4, 6, and 7. When God said this, he said, if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. His desire is for you, but you must master it. It's vitally important. In the end of the Bible, Jesus said, I came into the world. He said, you're going to have much tribulation in this world. You're going to have a lot of tribulation. And we all do. I think we can agree that most people face tribulation, especially when you are attempting to wake up. You're going to have it. I mean, we're all going to have this, every single one of us. You don't just wake up one day and that's the end, and it's all peaches and cream and you don't have any problems to deal with. Matter of fact, when you set your goal on becoming awake, rest assured you're going to have a major challenge ahead of you in terms of overcoming the ego. What was the sin he was referring to here? Sin is the ego mind. It's the fear-based mind. But Jesus said, you're going to have much tribulation in this world, but fear not, because I came into the world and conquered it.
Well, he had human experiences throughout his time.
He did. Exactly.
Conquering it was,
How did he conquer the world then?
I guess, on the cross, forgiving. But to me, that's one moment of one moment of grace. That's not truly conquering. I mean, that's a moment of grace. Because it had his life continued. I mean, prior to that, supposedly the day prior to that, he had a human experience.
He had human experiences.
So, he didn't conquer it.
Well, wait a minute. He conquered it, and then he left.
Right.
We're not talking about if he lived here for another 100 years, whether he gets sucked back in again. Okay? He came into the world and he conquered it.
So that means on your deathbed, if you're truly awake, you may conquer it.
Well, doesn't matter if it's on your deathbed or if it's right here, right now.
Yeah, but
Doesn't matter. Now always is.
If
Okay?
you're here right now and tomorrow morning you go to work and have a bad day, you didn't conquer it anymore.
Well, wait a minute. You didn't. You're right. Remember this. In the now we have awake or asleep, right? These are options, right?
Yep.
A or B. In this now moment. But now always is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always is. So let's say tomorrow morning I have something come, I don't know why, something comes in and I forget my true spiritual self and I get sucked into the moment. Paul talked about dying on a daily basis. I just died again, right? But then it only lasts for a moment and I wake up again. Am I asleep or am I awake?
At that specific moment, you're back to being awake.
All that matters, isn't it? Doesn't matter if I went to sleep 1,000 million times. All that matters is I'm awake. You see how now always is very empowering. Because you can choose to be awake any moment you want to choose to be awake. Even if I spent a lifetime asleep. Even if I was the rottenest son of a bitch walking the face of this planet, and I robbed and stole and did everything that everyone would think was the worst things I could possibly do with my life in this world. That's how I lived my life while I was asleep. But then I wake up. What happens to all my sins?
They're forgiven.
They're non-existent.
I know.
They're not forgiven, they're non-existent. That's why this was saying forgiveness is inconceivable in heaven. There's no reason to forgive. All we gotta do is wake up. Wow. How powerful is that?
Powerful.
Pretty powerful. Not always the easiest thing to maintain, but it's doable. This is what Christ really came here to demonstrate. This is how Christ was a Savior. Christ came into this world with a human mind to overcome his humanness, to prove it's doable. It's doable. Not to do it for you, but to show you it's doable. Not to exempt everyone else from doing their job and saying, thank you, Jesus, I'm saved. No, but to show it's doable. That's why Jesus, when he said, I am the truth, the way, and the light, and no one gets to the Father except by me, he said, I showed you how it's done, it's doable. No one gets to the Father except by doing this. Now it makes sense what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. Because everyone is responsible for themselves. No one can save another individual, and no one can stop another individual from the experience. We're all in charge of self. I can save myself. I can't save you. You can't save me. You can show me that you have made that choice within you, and now you can be an example for me, which makes you the Christ.
I follow it.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's right.
So it's all pretty simple stuff. Very simple, it really is. We make it too complicated. So now with the human mind, here we have, Cain said to Abel, his brother, let us go out into the field. And when they arrived in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Not bad for the first family. Not accepting that God looked upon him with the same degree of love, Cain felt the best solution was to eliminate the competition by killing his brother. Makes sense?
Yeah.
No? God loves my brother more than me, and if my brother's dead, guess what? I'm it.
I got it all.
Yeah, I'm the king of the hill. So that's why he killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where's Abel, your brother? He said, I don't know where he is. I'm not my brother's keeper. And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength, and you shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me this day from the ground, and from thy face I shall be hidden. And I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And whoever finds me shall slay me. Of course, we're not going to talk about where the other people came from or whatever. But then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who came upon him shall kill him. Then Cain went from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife. We won't talk about where she came from. And she conceived and bore Enoch, and built the city, and called the name of their city after the name of his son Enoch. So basically, what we're looking at here, if we look at the Bible is a story to help us understand some things. And as we've talked many, many times in here already about the difference between the tree of life, which is the awakened state, there's our tree of life. Love, awake. And everything else belongs to the other system.
Right.
Course in Miracles says there are two complete thought systems. Two complete thought systems. One is real, one is unreal. But just because it's unreal doesn't mean you can't experience it. Just like you say, you've experienced dreams. We've all experienced dreams. You're experiencing this world. You experience your anger. You experience your judgments. And you'll experience them and they'll affect you. They'll affect the body. They will affect the molecular structure of the body. The body can create diseases and illnesses and all these different things relative to our thoughts. It's common knowledge. Hang on to an angry thought, you can make the body start to experience that anger. You get physically ill. Right? When we change our thinking, everything around us changes. Everything about our experience changes. That moment changes. But that's part of the thought system that we're now venturing into here. We're talking about man's mind. We're talking about the judgmental mind. And we see what happens. As soon as they talk about the first family dealing with a human ego mind, one brother kills his brother. Wow. Interesting. Where's the love? You would think that, it would start off loving.
Right.
But it
Not once
doesn't.
they ate of the tree of knowledge.
I'm sorry?
Not once they ate of the tree of knowledge.
Exactly. So you see what looking at the world through dualistic judgmental eyes does is it brings you fear. The fear then clouds your vision. It happens to all of us. When you judge somebody, you feel certain things. And most of the time they're not pleasant. And we create all kinds of thoughts. Someone comes through the door with a hood on, automatically we're going to judge that situation, and most likely you're going to be fearful, especially if you see a gun with the hood. But anyway, for those who do not understand that these are stories, that these stories are not to be taken literally, ask yourself the following. If Cain and Abel, along with their parents, Adam and Eve, were the only people on earth, who was Cain referring to when he feared for his life? And where did Cain's wife come from? So the reason I talked about that was these stories are not to be necessarily taken literally. They're not. But you can look at them in terms of what they mean and what you can get out of them. Because there's a lot of truth here. There's a lot of meaning you can get out of these stories. A lot of understanding. The story of Cain and Abel depicts how far man had fallen from love and shows how the first murderer was rationalized in his mind. Instead of love and oneness, which is what that book was talking about, that oneness, fear and separation had become the dominating influences. The moment you embrace the concept of the ego, I'm me, you're you, my brother, it's all individualized aspects. And now what we're going to do is we put a value to each and every one of those. This is how in our immediate families we have special relationships. My son is the best student in this school, and my Johnny is better than your Charlie, you know. And this is what we do. Everything's about competition now, right? Because now there's pride. Mine's the best.
You'd love it. I have a magnet on the refrigerator at home, and it's 3 camels, and on the back of one camel it says, you know, my son's in medical school. On the back of another camel it says, you know, my son's in college, whatever, you know. And then the people are dressed in the day of Mary and Joseph, and the woman goes, oh, if it isn't Mary and Joseph. And on the back of that camel it says, my son is God. That's great.
So did you read this by any chance?
I read
I know
it.
Mickey told me he didn't really read it.
Right. I did, but it's been a long time ago now. I did
Oh, yeah?
back when I first purchased the book.
Did you read the whole thing, or?
Yeah, I got it highlighted throughout.
Oh, yeah? I was just kind of curious, because what we're doing in here, of course, is going really in depth as we read. When you read it on your own, is this what you got out of it?
Not as deep as we do it by piece in class. Broad strokes, yes.
Broad strokes, yes.
But did I miss a lot? I mean, could I got a lot more out of it? Yes.
But it would probably take more conversation and,
Yes.
and
Oh,
like
this is
that.
by all means helpful.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But it was kind of leading in this, it didn't,
Right. But you gotta remember too,
you already had some foundation before you picked it up.
right, and I had a comfort zone with it before I even started.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
still, even saying that, no, doing it the way you do, going through, you get so much more out of it.
Well, maybe someday this will go on the internet. That'd be good. Or somewhere, I don't know.
When I call you back about a half hour.
So fear and separation had become the dominating influences. We are witness to the burden of dealing with the most negative energy, the extreme point on ego's journey. If we look at love and fear, if we look at Cain and Abel,
You get a little bit of extra calm.
and here we have good and evil, and his unconditional love. The moment that he chose to judge, he goes all the way to the extreme end over here. I mean, there was no in between. He went right to here, and he kills his brother. Wow, interesting. If we were to continue to read Genesis, we would find that the wickedness of man continued in generation after generation, leading up to the great flood, the cleansing. Now remember, the Bible is a story to just represent states of consciousness and experiences and different things. And if you look at it that way, it's going to have a lot more meaning. For example, I remember reading something in the Bible in the Old Testament where God said, oh, now remember also, remember that God didn't actually write the Bible, man wrote the Bible.
Right.
And man's writing the Bible relative to where their thinking was.
Right.
Okay? And so if you look at it, this is where their thinking was. There's some truth in it, and there's also some clouded issues, such as we have a vindictive God. Okay, a vindictive God cannot be when we have an unconditionally loving God.
Never made sense to me as a
No,
child.
it doesn't. And this is the reason why, if you read the Old Testament is a lot of man's interpretation of God relative to their human ego personalities. And they attribute a lot of the human ego personalities to God, saying, here's God, here's how he thinks. Now, the reason they do that is because their mind is split as humans. They're seeing good and they're seeing evil. They're not seeing God here.
Right.
Nor are they seeing that this is the objective. This is the biggest problem with a lot of the traditional religions is they're not seeing non-judgment as the objective.
Yes, you're here for based off.
What they're seeing is their own righteousness. OUS? Their own righteousness is what their objective is. As good humans. Now, Christ said, the righteous will never inherit the kingdom.
Are you very students? No.
Knowing what you know, is that a true statement?
Yeah.
It's impossible. Cannot be done. You cannot take someone who's righteous and move them to a place of non-judgment and say they belong there.
Right.
They don't belong there. It's impossible for them to go there.
What's it say about righteousness in the Bible?
The righteous will never inherit the kingdom.
It says that in the Bible?
It says it in the Bible. Don't ask me where.
No.
For the right money, I could find it. It's in there, trust me. If I say I've read it in there and it's in there, you can take it to the bank. If I say I'm not sure about this, but it's in there, absolutely. And this is the reason it's in there. It's true. It also goes on to say this: not knowing God's righteousness. Not knowing God's righteousness, they set out to establish their own righteousness. Okay? Well, what is God's righteousness? Well, God's righteousness is based on non-judgment. Unconditional love. Right? Here's God's righteousness. This one is based on good and evil. Human righteousness is always based on good and evil. God's righteousness is based on unconditional love. Worlds apart. Totally different frequencies. And you see how all of the various dimensions within creation are operating at frequencies. Well, this frequency cannot fit into that dimension. Can't do it. Can't take an ice cube and shove it into a bottle. No, it won't go. The bottle, I mean, you've got to change the frequency of the ice cube, and then it can just pour right in. Well, the same thing. As spiritual beings, all we have to do is change our frequency, which we're doing every moment. Every single moment we change our frequency, from this to that to that to that to all over the spectrum. All based upon this. Where's my treasure? What is it I choose? Where am I going? What am I experiencing? What do I share? What am I sharing with the world? That's what creation's about. This is what we're doing. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So here we are in Genesis. The Lord, now again, remember this is mankind looking at this, and he's describing God. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. So we're saying this: the human ego mind is continuously evil. That's what this is saying. True or not true? True or not true?
I'd say true.
The ego human mind that sees things in terms of dualistic view, what is evil? Not the evil I was brought up to understand, but the true definition of evil. Evil would be anything that is viewed
Dualistically.
Dualistically. That would be evil. I don't care what it is. This is why the Bhagavad Gita, I talked about this a few times in here, the Bhagavad Gita says that the hottest state for us to break out of, the hottest mode for us to get past, is the belief in goodness. Because if you believe in goodness, aren't you looking at things from a dualistic mind? You can't believe in good without believing in evil. So in other words, I have to judge. I have to judge to believe in good.
Right.
I can't look at the world through a non-judgmental eye and not believe in goodness. So if I'm in my ego mind, judging the world, I'm going to be continuously evil. Not in the traditional interpretation, the way we've been brought up to believe evil, but yes, if you look at now definition of evil, anything that's keeping you from the vibration of unconditional love. Any thought that's keeping you from the unconditional loving vibration, if you slap the label evil on it, now you're going to have a truer representation of what it really is supposed to mean. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's very common sense.
Does it?
When we sit here and talk it.
Yeah.
The moment I go home and I put on the news and then what's the latest news? The governor of New York.
Yeah, isn't that great?
And I actually, I don't know, for work feeling bummed today just because it was one corruption story after another.
Well,
I know. So I am
you just
judging.
swallowed some gum.
I'm judging, so I am evil.
No, yeah, you.
I'm evil.
I didn't want to say it, but now that you did, oh my God! You know, I look at it. People say this: "Oh, if you want to stay centered, don't watch the news." I look at that. That's bullshit. You know what? You're in this world. Live in the world. Live in the world, but recognize you're in it, but not of it. I know I shared this a few times about my son when he was only 11 years old, asking me what's bud, marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was going to try to smoke. And I looked and I said, is he supposed to have this experience or he's not supposed to have the experience? Who the hell am I to know what he should be having as an experience? That's what I came to realize. It's not my place. It's my place to love him, support him, and to help him understand his true spiritual nature. If he's supposed to smoke pot and maybe get caught, probably the most perfect thing he should be experiencing in this moment. How good is that? I look and I say, if you collapse your view of good and evil, or right and wrong, or what should or shouldn't be, then recognize the perfection in the moment. I look at the news and I see the governor and I say, hey, isn't this great? I look at the governor and he's out feeding the poor. I say, oh, isn't this great? In other words, everything should be viewed as perfect, no matter what comes. If you look at it, I look at things this way. If I look at something and I used to view it as a negative, I use that to reinforce my ability to look at the world and say, I'm in the world but not of the world. Forgive them, they know not what they do. How perfect is this? And then I see someone do some good. Oh, I'm in the world but not of the world. How perfect is this? Everything should be handled the same way. It's perfect. How great. So Bill had sex in the White House. Oh, isn't this great? It addresses a lot of our core beliefs that we have to let go of. I say, that was a great move. How perfect was that? Beautiful. There's no wrong in it. Now, that's hard for people to get to when they're of a judgmental mind.
Definitely.
Well, to me, and I can follow that and live with that a lot easier than the day-to-day. And what I mean by the day-to-day is I work with people that make $60,000 to $80,000 a year, and when they retire, they're going to make $60,000 to $80,000 a year.
Wow, good.
And lucky them, I realize that.
Yeah.
And then they're sitting there at a desk with their feet up on the desk,
Right.
staring at a wall,
Okay.
while you're killing yourself to get your work done to make it here on time.
Yeah. You know,
And I don't make anywhere near.
but again, and I've been down this road many, many times, and I toyed with it at the beginning, and I felt my own frustrations. There was a time when I was making a couple $100 an hour, and a couple of years ago I was making 20 cents an hour. 20 cents. Okay. This last year, I think I maybe made 40 cents. I probably did a little better. My human intellect looks at this and says, wait a minute. I understand creation. Look at me. What am I doing here? This is stupid. This is asinine. I'm struggling. I'm not paying my bills. I haven't made any money in 12 years since Suni and I have been together. I still haven't made any money. We've gone backwards for the last 3 years financially, each of the 3 years. And, she's getting worried and saying, when are you going to do something, make some money? I got to look at it and let it go. That's not an easy thing to do. It truly isn't, especially somebody who's used to making things. I've been self-employed since I was 18. I've had 5 different businesses, and I know I could go out, forget all this, and go make some money and be comfortable financially. But I also know this is what I'm in the world to do.
You can't do both.
I can't do both. I can't use my mind to make the money. It doesn't mean I can't have the money while I'm doing this. And I'm never going to put that obstacle there. But I have to also understand this. If I surrender my attachment to what the picture should look like, then I have to trust God will handle the details and let it unfold as it should. Even if it's 2 people sitting here or 1 or none. It's perfect. And I know it's perfect. When I wrote this because I knew what I experienced was absolute truth. I know it's absolute truth. I know that the world that shows itself to my physical human eyes is an illusion. That I know. I know that our perceptions and our beliefs and everything that we're experiencing is erroneous in terms of that which is true and ultimate reality when you compare the two. So what I'm saying is, our job, my job, everyone's job, is to wake up and recognize that we're here to help one another and to share agape love. Not just talk about agape love, not just intellectualize it, but to live it. Now, in order to live it, there is a way, and Christ was very, very explicit about how you do that. And you do that by forsaking everything and everyone, including our special relationships. Because the moment we have a special relationship, what we're doing is we are accepting the belief system of the human over the spirit. We're believing in separation. We're believing in our immediate priorities over the whole. And so, I don't know how many people will really accept that and follow it and live it, and that really isn't relative to my living. I'm responsible for me, so I must make that conscious choice over and over and over again, which at times is hard. Yeah, Ginger would agree.
Say the least, oh man. One of the hardest lessons I ever learned in my life.
But anyway, when we look at the Bible, I'm going to get back to it because we're almost through for your time here. When you look at the Bible and you look at the Old Testament, what you're going to find is you're going to find man's view of how to be a good human. Almost everything in the Bible is going to be based upon man's interpretation, not spiritual. And that's why it says this one. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart were only evil continuously. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him in his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, man and the beast, and creeping things and the birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Now, this is not a God of unconditional love speaking about its creation. This is man's interpretation of God relative to their concept of good and evil. Very important. God didn't write the Bible, man did.
Right.
Hallelujah.
Jesus' disciples were poor, uneducated Aramics. The people who wrote the Bible were educated Greeks. So if I were to tell a secret when we're around the room, how does it come out? And now we're talking, how does it come out if we all speak a different language as we interpret it?
And how about how many years later
36 years was the earliest.
was the earliest?
Was the earliest.
Just for example, if in fact we had even 10 people in this room night after night after night, and they were here for a year and a half, and then 30 years later, each of them tells the story of, oh, this is what Bruce said.
Oh my goodness.
Here's what he said, and here's how he said it.
Are we including
Are we all going to be in sync?
Right.
Would each story be exactly the same? Would it be the same translation? Would each have their own little slant?
Well, I loved it. Shane ran it, Monty Python, the Life of Brian.
Oh my goodness.
This past weekend. There's Jesus on the mountain. The meek shall inherit the earth. And of course, these are in the back. What did he say?
They can't hear.
And I forget who was going to inherit, but it wasn't me. It was comical.
Oh yes, Monty Python is hysterical.
Yeah, because as he's talking, it doesn't reach all the way back, so they're turning around and interpreting. Well, I think he said, and then
Oh yeah. And then you're
The
going to hear it
mice
all
are going
different
to
ways.
inherit it.
Well, you know what? Maybe we'll just finish this up to page 33. Since there's only a couple of chapters left, I'll go through it quick.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? Okay, according to our story about the great flood, God cleansed the earth of evil that had developed. And he accomplished this. Wait a minute. He acknowledged that the evil is innate in the heart of man. In other words, evil is the default of the human mind. Now I know I mentioned that in here a couple of times, and I saw the reaction, and people have a bit of a problem. I remember watching someone and seeing the facial expression, didn't quite agree with that from the human mind evil. But again, the evil I was referring to was this evil. It was looking at things through a judgmental mind.
Right.
That's the evil I was talking about here. Okay? That's what I mean when I say evil is the default of the human mind. In other words, evil
is the
is
result of conditioning.
result of conditioning. In story after story in the Old Testament, you'll find that man is continuously at odds with the spiritual essence, which is love. Repeatedly, the consequence of choosing ego, over God, spirit, are demonstrated. The ego is king in the world of man, and for this reason, the law had to be introduced. The law, the Torah, I'm referring to, was made up of many laws, and if you read all of the so-called books of Moses, the first, I'm gonna skip. What is that word? The penta. How do you pronounce that? I
How
can't
you
even.
spell it?
Penteuch.
It's weird.
We all see it.
Anyway, we all see it. The first of the 5 books of the Old Testament, you will become more familiar with it. Rather than recount every story continued in the Old Testament, I will feel it would be more helpful. Boy, how'd that happen? Okay, I feel it would be more helpful to summarize it as one story, the way it was originally meant to be understood. Starting at the beginning, it introduces the formation of the three-dimensional world, the physical universe. Next, man is introduced as a body to house the soul. This is done in order to allow the soul to experience itself in the form of matter. The lower vibration of the body proves to be too much for the soul, and the connectedness or link to all that is, it becomes veiled. So now, if we look at it that way, look at the mind as the humans around everyone that you see living in this world. They're not operating at the frequency of unconditional love. They're in a human form.
Everything is out of fear.
And everything basically is reacted out of fear. And so when you look at it that way, the lower vibration of the body proves to be too much for the soul, and the connectedness or linked to all that is becomes veiled. That's the veil that's talked about in the Bible. It is replaced by a world of illusion based upon perception. So this is where, if you read the veil in the Bible, it says the veil upon the eyes, that's what it's talking about. It's talking about your ability to discern unconditional love as opposed to judging the world. No longer is man governed by love, oneness. Fear becomes the influence or the initiator of each experience. Now, again, if you look at the now moment, you'll see what's happening here. And you'll see this is why it says in the Bible, and as you believe, so shall it be. It also says God gives them delusions to believe their own lies. Okay? So here we are in a judgmental mind. Right here. We set the energy into motion, comes back in terms of an experience. God's will is also interwoven in that. Every moment of every day, every nanosecond of every day, God's will is woven into every thought you have. You can't separate yourself from it. What is God's will? God's will is only one thing.
Non-judgment. Awakeness.
You awaken. That's God's will, period. What does awaken mean? Stop judging. And experience love. That's it. How simple can it get? You know? So when people say, well, God doesn't have a will, that's God's will. That's it. Now, someone dies in a car accident. God's will? No. Wasn't God's will. Someone survives a car accident. God's will? Wasn't
Somebody
God's
wins a
will.
football game and somebody loses a football game. That
Wasn't
one
God's-
cracks you
yeah.
up more than anything.
Yeah. God's will.
Right.
It was God's will that we lost. Of course.
Only if
But
Mr. Burrow loses.
I don't know. I go to enough psychic classes though to talk about your time here on Earth. Does the Holy Spirit help manifest that, even though it's not
Well,
God's
let me
will?
say the Holy Spirit helps manifest every single moment of every single.
Including when
Including
it's your
everything.
time to leave
Well,
this.
But wait a minute. Here we are. Now always is.
Right.
Okay? Is my time written in stone when I'm going to depart this world?
I don't know.
What would be your assessment relative to what you know?
It would be the movie screening theory. Well, if I chose at 16 to take up drugs and drinking and
So in other words,
throw
it's
myself
relative
into
to the choices I make.
there you go.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement. Relative to the choices I make. So is it set in stone? If it was set in stone, I have no free will.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not already destined. Nothing is already destined. Now always is, meaning now I can change.
Choose.
I can choose any experience I want and I can alter it. Now this is where the Course in Miracles is very, very explicit, and it says all of creation will be adjusted to accommodate your choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you choose to live, you know, what they consider a healthier lifestyle, then you may live longer, you may not. But if you choose to live a stressful life, you may develop some type of cancer or whatever that, you know, a disease out there that may be related to that stress that you've been living for, you know, and that's the choice that you make to live that life.
But the day is not set.
No.
The day's not set. Nothing is set. The destiny of this world isn't set. They talk about the evolution of consciousness happening in the world. What's going to happen tomorrow? Who the hell knows? Nobody knows. All of us collectively in this world are affecting change. We're all affecting change. We're affecting change with self. Now, recognizing that self, when no one's an island, we're all interconnected. What you do affects me, what I do affects you. And so on and so on and so on. And throughout the whole. What I just heard you read off of some extraterrestrial coming and speaking and saying basically that they would not interfere in this world except they put an exception in there, I guess, except for when it would have some kind of an impact into the intergalactic structure, I'm paraphrasing, of the bigger, you know, parameter of what's going on.
Right.
Other than that, they leave things as they are. Well, that's kind of true and not true. But the idea is, what you do, I do, is all interconnected. Everything is interconnected. But nothing is set in stone, and each of us has the opportunity to alter our experiences in every given moment. That's what free will is. Free will can never be taken away from anyone.
Right.
And therefore, nothing can possibly be preordained. Nothing's preordained in terms of that which is experienced. God, seeing that man had chosen to live in the world of illusion and separation, introduced laws necessary to govern the world. Because God is all-loving, the creator of all things, including man, these laws are not based on reward and punishment, which is another vitally important concept for us to get. Governed by judgment, but rather on love focused on cause and effect. The purpose of these laws was and is to present in each moment an opportunity for man to remember his real identity as a child of the one creator, all that was and all that is. So in other words, when we have something happen to us, somebody gets an illness,